Hello, MVP Days fans. We have a very special session for you here today. This actually isn't my session. This is Mr. Thomas Rayner's session on community contributions. Being an MVP is something very important to both of us, and we're super excited to be here with you today. So, Thomas, are you on the line with us here?
I sure am, or at least I hope I am.
Awesome. Well, hopefully everybody can hear you all right as well. Do you want to just do a really brief introduction about yourself, where people can find you in the community and where you blog?
Yeah, so I'm Thomas Rayner. I'm a cloud and data center management MVP, and I do most of my blogging and speaking and all that about PowerShell. And you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Thomas Rayner, or my blog is workingsysadmin.com, and those are probably the best ways to get in contact with me. I'll throw in your Twitter and blog on the title slide as well there, Dave.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, and I am Dave Kawula. You can get me at Dave Kawula, and I blog at checkyourlogs.net. And I think one more really important thing to mention is last year, Thomas, I think you were awarded a special award by the Microsoft scripting community, and you're now an honorary scripting guy at Microsoft, correct?
That's right. The Hey Scripting Guy blog is an institution in the PowerShell community. It's got over a decade of near daily posts, sometimes twice daily, all about different types of PowerShell and different scripting solutions for beginners, intermediates, experts. And it was run by Ed, the scripting guy Wilson. And it was a platform where MVPs and prominent community experts could do guest posts and things of that nature. I was lucky enough to have that opportunity, and because some of my posts were popular and I gave a bunch of posts to them, I got the Honorary Scripting Guy title. I think there's only a few of us, and now that Ed's retired as of, I think, March, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the future of that award, so I might have been the last one. I might have snuck in under the wire.
Well,
Don't take my word for it. It's just a maybe.
maybe you can take that over. That would be pretty cool. All right, so on with the
Yeah.
show. On with the show here. Let's see what we're actually here to talk about here today. I think we're here to talk about the love of community, and what does community mean? Because this is something that often I find that is a word that gets passed around a lot in the IT community. And maybe you can just go into a brief description, Thomas, as to what does community mean to you? Because you're a very active Microsoft MVP, and I think you really embrace the spirit of, what community really means, because you've had the chance to run user groups. You've been very active in the PowerShell community. So what does community mean to you?
Yeah, it's kind of an abstract concept in a way, because when you ask a lot of MVPs that type of question, like what does it mean to be a member of the community, you'll get things like, oh, it means I do a lot of blogging, or oh, it means I'm active on Slack, or oh, I do this speaking, I do a couple of conferences every year, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, what it really means is all of those things and more. And when we talk about community, we're really talking about like the people that make up the technology community, for lack of a better term. It means dealing with people and spreading knowledge and learning from others, and connecting with the humans that actually work with all of this stuff and learn about it themselves and have information to share. And I don't claim to know everything about PowerShell or any technology stack that I work with, not by a long shot, but there's a good chance that I know something that somebody else might not know, because there's definitely people who know stuff that I don't know. So I took it upon myself to start sharing items on my blog and answering questions on TechNet, which are two places that you can find other people. People are listening and reading and learning and sharing stuff all the time. So I decided to start participating that in myself.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. And for me, Thomas, I think the big thing for me is being so active and working with so many people in the IT world. Is community to me is the exact same thing. It's the unfettered willingness to share all of your knowledge that you have. This like that's a big concept. But for me, I believe that if we're transparent in what we do in IT, and we share the knowledge that we have with the community, we can become better together. Because like you said, I don't know everything that there is to know about cloud and data center and virtualization technology, we've built a big network inside of this community of like-minded individuals. So when we do have a question, we have a place that we can freely ask questions, not feel embarrassed for asking maybe what we would think would be, a simple or a silly question, because there are no simple or silly questions. Everybody's got to learn somewhere. And regardless of where you are in your career, if you're just starting out, or if you're moving kind of more to kind of an expert level on a certain technology you're on, I think community is really key. And I had the chance to speak at the Microsoft Ignite conference this year down in Orlando, and that was a really big focus, was around community, and was around just meeting individuals that shared the same interest as you. So if you're not involved in a community today, Thomas, what are some suggestions that you can give to maybe some individuals for how they can get started? Like, how could they even find maybe even a local user group if they don't know where it is?
Yeah, and we've got a couple of bullets on that coming up, but to spoil it for them, meetup.com is probably the best place they can go to find physical gatherings in their area, user groups and things like that. Whether they're, for instance, in Edmonton, where I'm located, we've got the Edmonton Microsoft user group, which is a bit of a generalist group. But we've also got a .NET user group, a SharePoint user group, a SQL group as well, among others. I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, but they're all on Meetup, or at least as far as I'm aware they are. And Microsoft has really embraced using Meetup as well. And so if you go there, you can put in where you're from and what your interests are. And maybe it'll be a Microsoft-related user group, or maybe it won't be. But go and visit and watch a presentation or attend an event. You don't have to go and speak the first time you go. You can just go and watch and talk to somebody or ask a question during somebody else's session, or whatever the format for their gathering is that you're attending, and get a feel for it. See if that's the type of place you'd like to go present or not.
No, absolutely. And one of the suggestions that I have for people, because I had difficulty early on in my career, believe it or not, in social settings, taking and introducing myself to new people. And it took me a lot to really overcome that. So one of the things I have to suggest to people is, when you go to these events, make an effort to take and shake somebody's hand and introduce yourself to somebody that you haven't met before, because you never know what type of walk of life they come from. And I think you're really going to surprise yourself, and you're going to get a lot more out of these communities by taking and being engaged and involved. And so you don't have to start that way, but I think the more that you get into being part of these communities, I think that the overall experience is a lot better.
Yeah, you're touching on a hugely important point. I tell people all the time, especially when it comes to community, you'll get out of it what you put into it. So if you're there to sit against the wall and watch somebody talk, then that's what you'll get out of it. You'll get a little bit of knowledge that you didn't have before. But if you go there to share and connect, then you'll leave with connections you didn't have, people you can ask questions to, all types of opportunities for self-improvement that you wouldn't otherwise have. And so observing and just kind of watching in the community and being kind of that read-only look is fine. And it's a good place to start. But when you actually start participating is when you start realizing all of the unlockable benefits of the technical communities that exist in your fields.
Yeah,
Maybe we should move on to the next slide.
absolutely, absolutely. And so as you start getting more involved in those communities, people start to recognize those efforts that are put in. And that's actually how, Thomas, you and I became Microsoft MVPs. We found these communities, we became engaged and involved, and found that, we really had a love for it. We had a passion for sharing this information. And so that's kind of the epitome of what a Microsoft MVP is. It's a very passionate individual about the technology that they know and that they understand, and their willingness to share with others that are out there and
Well,
become
exactly.
experts in their field, right? So for
Yeah.
you, what is being an MVP being like for you? because I think you're coming on your third award year now, right?
Yeah, I just got my third award in the mail
Nice.
last July. And that's kind of one of the things you see is I didn't get my MVP award because I was chasing it exclusively. I was awarded because I was doing things that I already loved doing, which is a very common thread among MVPs. As you start participating in communities and you start sharing things, you start posting blogs or writing books or speaking at events or anything of that nature, or sharing technical knowledge, you'll find yourself rubbing shoulders with lots of other MVPs because, like you said, that's exactly what we're all passionate about. Is MVPs are full of passion to contribute and share knowledge with the community. Subject matter experts of all different types of stacks and areas and topics, and it's an unbelievable network to be thrust into. What's it like being an MVP? Well, it was kind of funny. Like as you start sharing in the community and you start getting some good feedback in general, you kind of start feeling like, yeah, I kind of know what I'm talking about, and this is a pretty good place for me to be in. I'm getting good feedback. People have said that some of my stuff has helped them, and wow, I've been recognized by Microsoft for all that I've given back. And immediately, like day one, you're added to some mailing lists and you're given access to some different networking tools, and you see some of the other people that you may even recognize from the community, but you get some access and some insight into some conversations, and you go, oh wow, I really don't know nothing.
Well, no,
It's a little bit overwhelming, and you know what? It's a bit of an imposter syndrome thing. Most of those guys feel the exact same way, where they go, "Yeah, I'm really knowledgeable about this thing, but man, that guy's knowledgeable about that, and that guy's knowledgeable about that, and that guy's knowledgeable about that." And that type of feeling hit me like a ton of bricks. Is you realize how much expertise there is among other MVPs.
no, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that part of, there's a kind of a community within a community with the MVPs as well, because what I've found is we almost have a global network, a global sharing network, a global platform of these individuals. So now you've kind of got the bottom end of that funnel, so to speak, of the individuals that are really truly passionate about this. And now, when we have something that we want to talk about, our networks combined are massive. Like you think about all your PowerShell MVPs that are out there. When you guys have something that comes out, like a new feature or a new version of PowerShell or a book on PowerShell or something like that, instantly the syndication around the world absolutely, it's kind of a little bit overwhelming, and at points in time I'm even a little bit awestruck by this, but it's so amazing to be part of this. And if this is something that you're interested, hey, it starts off with, engaging. So we've got some kind of cool statistics about, Thomas and my journey about kind of becoming MVPs and some of the things that we've been part of starting kind of from scratch, so to speak, for a lot of these items. And some of the ones that I'm kind of, most proud of and that's near and dear to my heart that I never thought would ever be possible a few years ago is we work very closely with the MVPDays community, and Super Crystal Kawula, my wife, who's also now an MVP. We started MVPDays as a way to give MVPs a platform to speak and share their message, and as part of that, started MVP Hour, which was nothing more than a platform to do a live kind of 1 hour Twitter chat. And this has spawned off so much in the last 24 months that we have over 14 million impressions, social media impressions on that hashtag. That's pretty impressive when you think about it's just a handful of really mostly Canadian MVPs that are driving and behind this. But we've got some other worldwide MVPs that help us out in there and a lot of viewers that also look at this. But 14 million impressions, that's a pretty profound number. And I just want to touch base on one thing really quickly, and that's Twitter. Twitter, for me personally, is my platform of choice for social media. Why? because in 140 characters or less, I can get out messages almost instantly. So, for example, there's some issue with a particular part of the operating system that might be causing a blue screen or a bug check, or something just got
That never
hacked or
happened.
cracked or whatever it is. We can get that out there nearly instantly. It's way faster than doing a video blog or a blog. Don't get me wrong, we still blog and we do that stuff in behind the scenes. But when we find something, we can near at real time get our messages out there. And my Twitter experience a couple of years ago, Thomas, and I think so did yours, started with only a handful of followers. Going back, 24 to 36 months, I only had maybe, 50 to 100 followers on Twitter. And I didn't really know or understand how to use the platform very well. And within a couple short years now, I think I'm up over 1,500 people that follow me. And, they're listening to, what it is that we're putting out there. And I think the same thing, you've seen massive growth in your Twitter community, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the nice thing about Twitter is that you don't have to sit down and do it for a long time. You can just hop on your phone and check out whichever hashtags you follow or check out the people you follow. And I kind of got behind it as well. I've had a Twitter account for a long time, since like 2008, but I never really used it, or I'd use it to just read stuff, or I followed comedians because you can do that too. And I never really clued in and learned how to leverage it as an information sharing platform until pretty recently. And I think, yeah, now as we talk about it, I'm up around 850 followers. So I'm nowhere near Dave Kawula levels, but neither of us are anywhere near Vlad levels.
Vlad levels or
But
Stephen
yeah,
or Stephen Rose at 150, 65,000 or whatever it is now.
oh geez, that's nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we don't have to sit here and evangelize Twitter as a platform, but what I think we're touching on is a platform for sharing technical knowledge. You wouldn't necessarily think, like, how much can I tell you about PowerShell in 140 characters? Well, the answer might surprise you. And so if you're on Twitter, which you should be, go to the PowerShell hashtag, or follow the Azure hashtag, or the S2D hashtag, or whichever one that uh, excuse me, corresponds with technology that you're interested in, and you'll find all kinds of new people that you didn't even know were out there. It's a great opportunity to interact with Microsoft employees as well. There's lots of them that are very responsive. Go and look at Jeffrey Snover's Twitter and tell me he doesn't like interacting with the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple other key points that we wanted to chat about here is January 1st of this year, we spawned something really cool off of our in-person MVP Days conferences, who many of you actually may have been to, because we branched that show out North America wide now, and now we've actually got a series of virtual conferences coming up that this particular presentation is going to be part of. But MVP Days Publishing was really cool because we had a lot of MVPs that were out there that were struggling to figure out a way to get themselves published as authors. And so we've actually started MVP Days Publishing as a mechanism to help those authors, not just first-time authors, but really help people get started with the ability to get their content out there in print format. And amazingly enough, we've got over 25,000 books sold across a series of 5, soon to be 6, 7 books that are out. We've done 3 volumes of our master PowerShell tricks, Thomas, which I know we're very passionate about. We just released our first Women in Technology book called Voices from the Data Platform, which was also amazing that we can have 7 first-time MVP female authors as part of that project. So that was pretty cool. And overall, 15 MVPs were first-time authors this year to date. So that was pretty cool. The MVP Days conference series, the in-person and the virtual conference series, we're now up over 100 plus individual MVPs that have contributed presentations to that particular series. That's pretty profound in itself to have 100 MVPs from all over the world now participating in MVP Days conferences. And the sole goal of that is helping to get that word out there for the community. These MVPs, they're not getting paid for this. They're not getting paid for these speaking engagements. They do it because they love to do it. Okay, so that's so important to take and to understand. You'll also find a lot of MVPs working at the Microsoft Ignite and a lot of conference booths and stuff like that. I had the fortunate pleasure in the last few weeks here to be down at the Microsoft Ignite event in Orlando, and there was a handful of us Canadian MVPs that had a chance to work at the various Microsoft booths, so that was pretty cool. Do you want to maybe just touch base a little bit on blogging and the work in the forums that the MVPs do?
Yeah, absolutely. And just as you're wrapping up about the MVPDays Publishing and conferences, I'm going to say those are both such a huge blessing, both as somebody who's looking for opportunities to share knowledge and as somebody who's hungry to consume that type of material that's being presented by others. I'm one of those first-time authors, and this year, as PowerShell Tricks 3 goes out, I'll have I'll be on 4 books this year, which is something that would have never been possible if I was left to my own devices and working with a traditional publisher. MVPDays conferences, is speaking as somebody from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We don't get a lot of conferences that come through here, and so to have MVPDays conferences come by and kind of travel with such a high caliber level of talent, it's hugely valuable just as a person participating to go learn from all those different people, and then as a content share to have those types of opportunities to speak in front of people is not something I take for granted. So the work that you and Crystal do on those two areas, and just for MVPDays in general, is hugely appreciated. So you guys deserve a round of applause for that. But it's a virtual session, so you're not going to get one. Talking about blogging and forum participation, that's kind of where I started. That was my bread and butter for a long time. My blog, which you see at the top of the slides, workingsysadmin.com, I posted there weekly for a while. I posted there every other week, and now I'm back to weekly posts again. But the reason I started that blog was as much for creating my own documentation and remembering things as it was to share knowledge with others. Selfishly, it was largely to serve me. It was stuff I figured out while I was working in my job as a sysadmin. And so it so happens that there were other people looking for the same content, and they found my blog through search engines or Reddit or on my Twitter or wherever else. Those links get shared out to. And I've had a lot of really good feedback on the types of things that I put out there. And so you'll find that with lots of people is talking about blogging and everything. Just it doesn't have to take up a lot of time, but you can get a lot of impact really quickly from it.
Awesome. So we're coming up on the tail end. We've got a couple of slides left to go through. So I think it's important to understand, how much effort these MVPs actually put in to community contribution. And once again, if you're not an MVP, every little bit of contribution helps. Even if you're, writing one blog post a year, it doesn't matter. If that blog post helps somebody, and if you're ever fortunate enough to meet somebody that one of these blog posts helps, what an amazing experience. Absolutely amazing experience. I had a chance to be at the VMON conference in May in New Orleans, and I had a handful of individuals actually come up to me and say, wow, we follow your blog. Your stuff is amazing. We've actually implemented and changed and modified the way that we do things based on some of the advice that that you've been able to provide in there. And that's what it's all about. It's about being able to take and to help out. Now, when you look about the actual contributions, for somebody like myself, it's a little scary when you think about how much time and effort are put in to the community. And I would say probably for myself, because I'm very, very passionate about this, I would say probably 600 to 800 hours a year is what we put back into the community. Now, understand that there's some inherent benefits that we get around that, because you can build a personal brand around that. And so there is a vehicle where if there's a good fit, somebody might come up and say, hey, listen, we might want to hire you for a gig or something like that. But that's not why we do it. We just do it because we love to share. So that's kind of my story around that. And, online, in person, at conferences, the amount of people that you actually talk to in a yearly basis or impact is pretty cool. And you're talking in the tens of thousands and sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of IT professionals that are actually listening to you as a voice in the community.
Yeah, and building off of that, the amount of effort that you put into it sort of represents the amount of impact you'll have, and the amount of impact you have kind of will dictate how much you get back out of it in return. It takes a couple seconds, maybe a minute, to pop off a tweet. It'll be seen by maybe however many people follow you, or it gets retweeted a couple times, and then it's gone. Maybe you got a little bit of a kickback from it and a discussion from the community, but it's relatively low impact, but it's relatively low effort. If it takes you a couple days to put together a blog post and it gets 100 views a day for the next year, well, that's a step up as well. It takes you a few days to travel to a conference and talk and do things, but again, as you mentioned, Dave, the connections you make at those things can be worth their weight in gold. So it's sort of the self-perpetuating flywheel of the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So you can put in as little as a couple of minutes on a tweet every now and then, or you can put in a whole lot more and go start blogging and speaking and doing all sorts of things, and you'll see quite quickly how much that investment pays off.
Well, and I think one of the other big things is if you want to get started in the community, find a mentor. Find your favorite MVP or person that's out there in the community. Ask them for help. Ask them, like, just say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about starting a blog, or I'm thinking about, getting engaged or involved. Don't be scared to do that. We're here to help. I've mentored a lot of new MVPs that have come into the program, and that's where it all starts. And so don't be scared to ask those questions as to, what it takes to actually get started with some of these pieces. So.
Yeah, it's not just technology that MVPs like talking about. Just as we're passionate about community, we're passionate about talking about giving back to the community too.
No, absolutely. And what happens when you participate and engage in the community like this and kind of really get connected with those communities? You can really help other individuals that are out there. And for me, that sense of giving back is absolutely amazing. Now, what I've found is that I'm very involved in the Microsoft Hyper-Converged space with Storage Spaces Direct. We have a lot of non-MVPs that participate in our hashtag Storage Spaces Direct threads that we have going up on Twitter. And we just feed off of each other as a community saying, hey, have you tried this configuration? Have you tried this piece of firmware with this particular driver, and did you have any success? And we feel each other out as part of the community like that, and it's great because once you get that sense of involvement, it's just such a really cool experience. Absolutely. Well, I think that's our
We're about ready to wrap it up.
That's our timer. That's our timer. We have. Hold on, I gotta just figure out how to stop this thing.
How you doing over there?
There we go. So we have that's our 1 minute left timer. So I think that where we should wrap up is probably right here. Is that how can these the individuals that are watching this get involved? So in 30 seconds or less, give us your advice, Thomas, on where's the best place to get started to get involved in the community.
30 seconds or less. Okay, There's three things. Well, there's a lot more, but the best three things you can do: start a blog, use WordPress as a platform, and host it wherever it makes sense for you. Get on Twitter, follow different people, participate in those conversations, check out what hashtags are relevant for you. And finally, meetup.com. Find local events that are near you, especially if you're not comfortable speaking. Go and check them out, and lots of them are hungry for speakers to come give sessions. So don't be afraid. Talk whatever about you're comfortable talking about. So those are the three things: blog, Twitter, meetup.com.
Awesome. And last and not least, Thomas and I are on Twitter. You can get us on our blogs. If you have any questions at all about technology or the community, or you just want to chat in general, reach out to us on Twitter. And you'd be quite surprised. We're actually very, very responsive there. So on behalf of Thomas and myself, thank you guys very much for attending this session. And we look forward to chatting with everyone soon.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.